What's going on, guys? This is Carlos with the Progress Garage. So we got something in the mail. So looks like a little surprise came in. So let's go ahead and unbox it and see what it is. Here we go. Straps are off. A lot of goodies. Premium brake pads. Infused formula compound, highest thermal spectrum assembly hardware included. See how they look. Ooh. Got the hardware. Put some grease in there. You know, right off the bat, I like the packaging. Packaging is definitely a 100 right there. I know when you go to AutoZone or O'Reilly's or any of the other parts store, they just wrap them in like some sort of paper, that's it. You know, but this one, look at that, plastic sealed. That's awesome. I'm already impressed. All right, let's see what else. All right, so all this was a kit. You know, all came as a combo. Let's see what's in this one. Look at that. They even send you brake fluid. Brake cleaner. Who does that? Like, for real, who does that? Who sends you all this stuff ready to do your brakes? All right, so this is the next box that was in the bigger box, the combo. Let's see, anti-rust coating, leak-free. What is it? There's a full-on caliper ready to go. Man, but look at the packaging. Everything looks crispy. Yet again, more hardware. Look at that piston. Looks nice. Everything looks clean. Has some bolts. Everything looks 100. Look at that. Okay, this is the other box. Just another caliper for the other side. Same thing. Nicely packaged. Polished. Looks nice and clean. Man, I'm impressed. All right, so this is the last box of the whole combo. Looks like it's gonna be the rotors. Look at that. road rotors. So these type of rotors are, I don't want to say the best, but a better quality than just the standard rotors, you know, especially if it's gonna be a fast car or a lowered car or a car that's that you're gonna be braking a lot. For example, hot desert places and stuff like that, where your brake pad, your rotor are gonna get really hot. These are recommended, especially because there's more airflow. So if you're that type of person that slams on the brakes, or you know, you're getting excessive heat, these are the type of brakes that I would recommend. Not only you will get better stopping power, but also you won't go through pads as quickly, because what happens when the brake pads get too hot, they crystallize. Even though you may have brand new brakes, if you are, you know, that type of driver that just slams on brakes, or is constantly braking, or even if you live in a hot place where your brake pads are, you know, gonna get hot, I would definitely recommend these type of rotors. Drill slotted rotors get cooler faster because there's more airflow going through the actual rotor. Especially with this type of car that we're going to be putting them on. 2000 Honda Civic, as you can see, is lowered. Yeah, it is. It has his you can see the old one in there, but less airflow, and we want more airflow in there. So we're going to go ahead and install these drilled slotted rotors and get the maximum braking power out of these brakes. But I'm impressed. I'm impressed with Detroit Axle. I guess it's obviously it's a company out in Detroit, but you know, they came a day early. I was expecting them on Thursday. They came in on Wednesday, but everything is nice and packaged. Nothing is damaged. So very impressed. Definitely gonna keep ordering from them. I'll go ahead and let me know if you guys need the website or whatnot, but I'm pretty sure you could look them up as Detroit Axle. They'll go ahead and get you squared away with whatever you need. Hit them up. All right, guys. So here I'm just gonna go ahead and start jacking up the car. The center, there's a spot right there, and I'm actually trying to fill it right there, where I'm able to put the jack and start jacking up the car. That's actually gonna allow the car to jack up evenly. But I'm also gonna put some jack stands on both sides just to be safe. You know, you can never be too safe, so just make sure you put some jack stands on each side, or the side that you're working on, and then put it on the other side. But yeah, it's always better to be safe. I went ahead and put the jack stands already on it. So here I'm actually loosening up the wheels. They're not too tight, so I actually, when the car was down, I went ahead and loosened them up. Didn't take them off all the way, but here I'm actually taking off the lug nuts. Yes, I do need to fix some studs on the car. I know one of them or two of them on each side are broken, so just be careful when you're tying them up or breaking them loose. Make sure not to strip them or to break them. Here, what I also like to do for safety, I always like to put the wheel right in between the actual base of the car, just in case. You just never know, car might fall or whatnot. Better be safe than sorry. So for removal, if you're gonna be removing the whole caliper, you could always just remove the two main bolts in the back. which on Hondas it's a 17 millimeter. You could go ahead and remove it. It's two big bolts. Total it would be two 17s and two 14s, and then you got your 112, which is for the feeder hose. That actually, the feeder hose is the one that feeds your caliper the brake fluid. So if you're going to be removing the entire thing, that's the bolts that you're going to be pretty much removing. Two 17 millimeter bolts, two 14 millimeter bolts, and one 12 millimeter bolt. So here, because I'm going to go ahead and remove the entire thing, I just went ahead and removed two of the 17 millimeter bolts and the feeder hose bolt, which is the 12 millimeter. And the entire thing does come off. So be prepared for brake fluid to start coming out as soon as you remove the bleeder hose. So as you can see, I have my little catch can at the bottom. So have some rags ready because it will leak out. So you can see the entire thing came out. So, and I just went ahead and, as you can see right there, the two 14 millimeter bolts are still in place. And there's the brake pads. They're still in good condition, but they kind of look crystallized. So I went ahead and just removed them and gonna go ahead and replace them, put some new ones on. The rotor doesn't look bad from the front, but from the back, as you can see, there's a groove in the inner ring. You can see it dug in, so not sure what happened there, but it's pretty deep. From there, you can see the feeder hose is still leaking a little bit, and I'm ready to put the new rotors in. Inspected it from both sides just to make sure that there's no chips or nicks, which there wasn't. Put them on, and right now, yes, you're gonna get some grease on them, you're gonna get some dirt on them, but lastly, once you get everything nice and tight and secured, you'll clean it up with that brake fluid, brake cleaner that they sent to you. Or if you just happen to have some in your garage that you did some previous work, you can use that as well. But as of right now, I'm gonna go ahead and I noticed that the dust shield was a little bent, so that might have caused that groove on the old caliper. I know I tend to use anything heavy as a hammer, so in this case I was using that ratchet as a hammer to kind of bent that dust shield back in place, away from the rotor, and put it back on and try to test it out. But I still noticed that there was a little scratching on it. It was kind of just enough to where in the long run it will affect it. But once I did get it away from the rotor, I went ahead and started placing the parts back in place. So the rotor back on. And at this point, I'm actually putting that caliper holder, you could say caliper bracket. That this bracket is the one that takes the 17 millimeter bolts. So what I did here first, I went ahead and placed the 17 millimeter bolts in place first. I didn't tighten them up just yet. I just wanted to make sure that it did fit and it was gonna be a good fit, which in this case it was. Once I did place them, I hand tightened them as much as possible, and I started to put the hardware on. So this hardware is pretty much, you could say, the sliders. There's two sliders that are placed, one at the bottom and one on top. This these sliders are the guide to your brake pads. So you always want to make sure that you have sliders on your calipers. It what it does, it creates a smoother path for your brake path to actually travel. As you can see, there's one at the bottom, one on the top. They're both the same thing, so it doesn't matter if you put one, either or, top or bottom, whatnot, or vice versa. It doesn't matter. They're both the same thing. They both have some rails. They both only go one way. So even if you were to put them, try to put them the incorrect way, you can't. They only go one way, and that's either top or bottom, one way. So right there, I'm actually looking for the better fit, just to make sure that there's no scratching to the rotor, that it fits nice and tight and not loose, which both did pretty good. And I'm just inspecting it just to make sure that they won't fall out, which they didn't, and it was nice and secured. Right there, I'm actually testing out the brake pads, the correct way that they're going to be going, and confirming that they are for this caliper assembly. So there, I'm actually putting on the grease on the top of the brake pad. So that little portion of the brake pad, that's gonna go in pretty much in the path of the slider. The grease that they sent, that was in the packaging, that's what I'm using. I am also putting grease on the back of the brake pad that's gonna be going on the piston side of the caliper. Why, do you ask? Because you want it to easily detach from the caliper, from the piston, when you press or depress the brake. You don't want it to get stuck on the actual on the piston of the caliper, where, for example, if your brake pad does get caught on something, you don't want that piston to be pulled out and not being able to retract. You want to go ahead and do it. Don't put too much grease. Just put just enough. Just smear a little bit on top and on the bottom. Place your brake pads on the sliders. Once again, they only go one way. They're circular to the rotor, so just make sure that they don't come out of the rotor, and they're just enough in there. So next step is putting the actual caliper. So with this, you want to be extra careful. This caliper, is deep, it's compressed in, but it does have two rubber bushings, rubber housing for top and bottom. That's where your 12, I believe it was a 12 or 14 millimeter bolts are gonna go through. You want to be careful with this. You don't want to tear it up. So hand tied first, just to make sure that you're not cross threading or anything like that. Some guys like to put a little bit of grease on the actual bolt. I would recommend just a little bit, not a lot, to not create too much dust in that slider bolt, but just put just a little bit and you'll be good to go on that end. The next step would be the new bolt that comes in with your brake pad assembly. So here, there's two copper washers. One of them goes on the inside of the bolt, and then you put the feeder tube, and then you're supposed to put the second copper washer. So it's gonna be bolt, copper washer, feeder tube, and then another copper washer. So you're pretty much creating a sandwich with the copper washers
for your brake fluid feeder hose. And this first one, I thought it, for some reason, I forgot to put the second copper washer. But later I caught myself and I went ahead and put that back on. So you want to make sure that you have those copper washers, or else you have the possibility of leaking brake fluid. It, you don't want that. You don't want to be leaking brake fluid, especially on the wheel, especially on your brake pad. That could be very dangerous if you get up on the street or the highway, and you might get some oil on your brake or on your wheel, whatnot, and that would be a scary situation. So just make sure that you do that copper sandwich. So lastly, once you get everything nice and secure, tight, here comes the most important, one of the most important parts. You want to go ahead and clean your rotors with that brake cleaner. Any excess grease or oil or fluid, you want to go ahead and clean it up. Here I'm just spraying it down, not being too stingy with it. Just go ahead and spray it. Don't be scared. Spray the rotor, the front and back, the caliper, and just have a rag ready, a clean rag ready, and just clean up your rotor, your caliper. Yeah, just make sure you clean it up nice and good. Don't be scared. Just spray some and clean it up. All right, guys. So we went ahead and finished both sides already. It's pretty much the same thing as the previous video. Couple bolts and on there's, I would say, what, 4 bolts. So one here, one at the bottom, same size. These ones are 17 millimeters, and these ones, I want to say they're 12s, 12 millimeter, and this one is the off one. That's a 11 millimeter. So once you go ahead and remove, if you're gonna go ahead and remove like the entire caliper, like I did, just go ahead and remove the 17 and the 17 at the bottom and the actual feeder hose, that one right there. So you don't, if you're gonna go ahead and replace the entire thing, you don't have to take off this one. That way it can all, come out in one piece. Much easier, much quicker. But yeah, 17. I want to say it's a 12 or a 14. Can't remember. And this one for sure is an 11. Once you remove it, same thing, putting it back in. So with that one, I would suggest do piece by piece. So first of all, you would put the rotor, in, then put the actual bracket, the 17-inch. If you're able to, you can tighten it up right there and then, or just tighten up the screws on the bolts hand tight for now, and then you could go ahead and put the actual piston, the actual caliper, this portion right here, then you can put it in. But before that, just make sure you have your brake pads in correctly, and the sliders. Put a little bit of grease on both ends, up here, down here. That way it's able to actually open and close smoothly. Yeah, over time you'll get some dirt built up in there, but that grease is very important. Also, the portion where I added grease also is on the portion of the piston. So I don't know if you can see it, but not really. It's kind of hard, but it's on the back of the actual back brake, because the piston, actually, it's a rubber seal with a metal, pretty much metal end. So you want to be able to what's it called, attach and release. You don't want the
the brake, when you actually release the brake, that piston could actually get caught in, so you don't want that. So you want the grease to allow the brakes to actually slide in and out properly. So with that being said, once you actually put on this portion, you already have your brake pads inside. You tighten up these ones, but you want to be careful with this because these ones are rubbered housing, kind of just like your axle. You want to go ahead and be careful. Make sure you don't rip them or break them. But that's on both ends. So on your feeder hose, the new part comes with a new bolt and two copper washers. One for, you can see it right there, one for the inside and one for the outside. Make sure you put both of them. That way you create a nice tight seal and it doesn't leak. I did only put one on the other side. I thought it was an extra one, but it wasn't. So I went ahead and removed the bolt, properly installed both washers. So one in the inside, one on the outside, as you can see. Tighten it up. And the last part is very crucial. You can't just put the brake pads, the rotors, the calipers, and not bleed the brake system, or else you're gonna have air. You're gonna have air in your brakes, and pretty much it's not gonna grab. So right now, we already went ahead and bleed the system. So with this, there is machines where you're able to use one person. You hook up to your port there, open up the port and bleed out all the oxygen, all the air that's in the system, so your brakes are able to actually grab accordingly. But if you don't have such thing, you'll need a second pair of hands, in this case a second pair of feet, to be able to push the brake. So I have my helper Dom in there. So he already helped me. We already did the process. So pretty much you always want to make sure that your brake fluid reservoir is always topped off before you start bleeding, because it doesn't help if there's nothing in there and you're trying to remove the air in your reservoir is empty, right? So it's only gonna go ahead and pretty much intake more air. So you always want to make sure that reservoir is topped off, and then from that point, what it's gonna entail is you're gonna open up the port. Your helper's gonna go ahead and push the brake pedal and hold it. So before he releases, you're gonna go ahead and close this port. Then at that point, your partner will go ahead and release. So you're gonna do that process until you don't see any more air or what's called little bubbles as you're opening up the port and closing it, opening it and close it, doing that process. Pretty much what you're doing is you're pushing the air out. So when the air comes out, you immediately close it. Your partner releases the brake. And before he pushes the brake again, you want to go ahead and open it up. Your partner pushes the brake, pushing out the fluid, close it, then your partner releases the brake. So you're gonna do that as much as possible until you see an even flow of brake fluid coming out of your port, right? You don't wanna see fluid, air, fluid. You don't want to see that. You want to see a nice straight shot of fluid coming out. But keep in mind, you gotta make sure that your reservoir is topped off all the time, even after, like, let's say 3 or 4, because that fluid has to pretty much feed all the line and the caliper, all that good stuff. So just make sure that your reservoir is always topped off, so you don't have to continue to go through that process of bleeding the system. So once again, you open up the port, your partner presses the brake, all that air or fluid comes out, your partner holds the brake in place all the way down, press down, you close the port, and then at that point your partner is able to release the brake. And before they press it again, you open up the port, they press the brake, and at that point they'll hold it. Close off the bleeder tube right there, bleeder nipple, you call it. Close it up, and then they'll be able to release it. So right now we're gonna go ahead and test and see if it actually grabbed, which we're gonna let my partner press the brake. It's hard. So keep on holding the brake, and I can't move it. So that means that the piston is fully extended to where it's grabbing on the rotor. So that's what we want. You know, you don't want it to where release the brake. You don't want it to, for example, your partner's pressing on the brake and your rotor's still moving. If that's the case, then you gotta continue to bleed your brakes. And if, for an instance, you keep bleeding the system, and it just, there's no end to the air, then that means that you have a leak somewhere. So you have to pretty much inspect all the hoses, the bolts, the nuts, the reservoir, all the lines, to make sure that you're not intaking air. Because if that was the case, then you could bleed 1,000 times, bleed the system out 1,000 times, and you're still gonna continue to get air in your system, and your car is still not gonna brake. So remember, if you replace everything and you're still experiencing the car not being able to or the rotors not, and still be able to turn them while the brake is fully pressed in, that means that there's a leak somewhere. There's a bolt or a nut that's not fully tightened. So you want to go through your entire system. I know it's tedious, but trust me, you want to go ahead and do that. Make sure that all the bolts, all the hoses are in good condition, tightened, secured, and not broken and not cracked or anything like that. In this case, I was gonna replace this, but it looked like they just recently replaced it. Looks brand new. So at this point, the brakes are in good condition now. I know I still gotta replace this thing right here, this stud. So, but as of right now, we're gonna go ahead and slap the tires back on and go test it out. Stay tuned.